My name is Pamela Smith. I'm the director of the Center for Science and Society, and the center was founded 3 years ago to foster really substantive research and teaching collaborations among scholars and practitioners across all disciplines: natural sciences, social sciences, humanities, education, and law. And often we don't talk to each other, so this conference is an attempt to do that. It builds on the events that the center puts on throughout the year that bring together natural scientists and other disciplines. And it also builds on a conference that we put on last year on evidence. And these conferences are a series. We are calling the series Conversations in Knowing and Certainty. And the aim is really just to get us to start talking across disciplines and to get deep very quickly by talking about really concentrated nuggets of our own research that has to do with methodology, that has to do with epistemology, that has to do with what kinds of levels of certainty do we expect from different disciplines, and do we, expect from other people's disciplines. So our conference about evidence last year was quite phenomenal. And it informed what looks like a very packed and hectic schedule that you have in front of you. But if everybody keeps to time, it will work. And we will learn an enormous amount about failure in other disciplines, about failure as a method and as a practice of knowing over the next 2 days. So the most important way to make failure a success today is that we keep to time, and I hope I haven't been the first failure, and that is the first failure joke that will happen over and over again, I'm sure, today. But before we begin, I want to make some thanks to people. First of all, to the people who really can't fail and who actually never do, and that is the Associate Director of the Center for Science and Society, Melinda Miller, without whom this conference would never have happened. She's back there. She just waved at us. And it really would have failed. So let's give her a round of applause. And then also to Roshana Nabi, the new project manager for the center, who was really thrown into the maelstrom of this conference in midstream and has never missed a beat. So thank you, Roshana, very much. I also just want to say a word about my co-organizers and Stuart Firestein from neuroscience, biology, who is the real heart of this failure conference. Xiaodong Lin from education, Jeremy Kessler, who will be here shortly, from law, Eileen Galuli from English and the Heyman Center of the Humanities, and you can just see what an interdisciplinary group of organizers it is. And I want to thank them. It's been a very stimulating, sometimes frustrating, but ultimately very stimulating process of trying to get everybody invited and here. The institutions supporting the conference are the Center for Science and Society, Teachers College, the Institute for Social and Economic Research and Policy, ISERP, the Heyman Center for the Humanities, and the John Templeton Foundation. So thank you also to all of you who have come, and I look forward to a really stimulating 2 days. And now I am going to ask Stuart and Xiaodong to come up and say a couple of words of introduction.
Good morning. Okay, so on behalf of the president and the provost of Teachers College, I welcome all to this incredible conference. And Columbia Teachers College is one of the oldest and the largest school of education that studies health, education, and psychology. So the important and this very important interdisciplinary conference should not have been more timely. For some time, my colleagues at Teachers College and other universities have been working to draw attention of policymakers to the importance of educating failure with the children so that they're prepared for life and for society. So having so many of eminent scholars, thinkers, and researchers coming today really prove, trying to study how the failure, learning from failure would encourage creativity and innovation, just prove one thing, that is learning from failure and go hand in hand with our personal growth as well as society advance. So I hope all of you guys have a great conference. And with Stuart, nothing can go wrong.
Let's see. Okay, I'm just going to make a couple of quick remarks. First of all, my sincere thanks to all the attendees. People have come from all over the world. Some traveled many, many hours to be here, even from the Southern Hemisphere. And it's quite a thrill to have everybody in the room together this way. And I think we have a vast number of interesting opinions. So let me just say a couple of quick remarks. I guess I'll begin with my failure joke, which is, of course, this conference has failure written all over it. And sorry. So this is, I actually was last week at the Santa Fe Institute for a conference on the limits of understanding, and we opened it with this remark and closed it with this remark, and I thought it's kind of relevant for this as well. So it's often the things that we can't see, the things that are hidden from us, the things that we kind of fail to perceive that make the world the most interesting places, or that are the most interesting places in the world. So this is a haiku from the famous poet Matsuo Basho. Of course, one of the heroes of failure is Samuel Beckett, and this well-known trope of his, or phrase of his, ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail again, and then that interesting end, failed better. It's often quoted. I'll just point out that Samuel Beckett, of course, the well-known author of Waiting for Godot, which had, believe it or not, I don't know how many of you know this, its American premiere in the Coconut Grove Playhouse in Miami Beach, Florida in 1956. Starring Burt Lahr and Tom Ewell, and it was billed as the laugh sensation of two continents. It ran 2 weeks, and according to Burt Lahr's autobiography, audiences left in droves at every intermission. So, but that didn't stop Beckett from figuring out how to fail better in many of his other plays and novels, eventually winning a Nobel Prize, which he refused to accept. So I think we should use him as a sort of an icon in this. I'd also like to use a quote from Benjamin Franklin, arguably America's first scientist, who said, perhaps the history of errors of mankind, all things considered, is more valuable and interesting than that of their discoveries, because truth is uniform and narrow, but error is endlessly diversified. So there's only a few ways to be correct, but there's endless ways to screw up. This is sometimes called the Anna Karenina principle, I think, after Tolstoy, who claimed that happy families are not that interesting because they're all happy in much the same way, but unhappy families are unhappy in so many different ways. There's plenty to talk about. And then I'll just end with this quote from Gertrude Stein, which was on the description of the conference, and I think it's an important thing to keep in mind, and that is that a real failure does not need an excuse. It is an end in itself. And I think the kind of failure we're interested in talking about today is not just retrospective failure, or failure that's only retrospectively good because it eventually succeeded or things like that, but failure is an integral part of the fabric of what we do and the way we succeed. I will end there. I always like failure in nice green letters, not red letters and things like that. And turn this back over to Pamela, who will chair the first session for us. So thank you all for coming very much.
Thank you, Stuart.